We resume in the Motostoke gym with the declaration of battle. Ash versus an unnamed girl with fire in her eyes. The girl reiterates her intentions, and Ash grins that he's happy to battle her, though first he needs to get his Pokemon healed. Curtly, the girl replies that she doesn't want to battle any of them, explaining that she's a fighting type specialist, who as part of her training has dedicated herself to travelling far and wide, battling powerful fighting types in single combat. Now, after much hard work, she believes she is ready to face off against a champion's fiercest fighting type. Ash grins that that's such a cool goal, but then pauses, thinking who his fiercest fighting type Pokemon is, with names like Infernape and Scraggy popping into his mind. Though after a bit of further thought, they are both fearsome fighters, but when it comes to fierce, there is only one choice. Still smiling, Ash tells his opponent that he knows just the Pokemon, though it may take him a little while to have it sent over from Kanto. The girl stoically nods, saying that if that's the case, he should meet her at dawn outside Galar Mine number 2. Ash promises he'll be there, then starts heading out of the locker room, before suddenly turning back and awkwardly chuckling that he forgot to ask the girl's name. The girl, cool as ever, simply replies that it's B, before bowing to both him and Raihan, then leaving at a measured pace. The next morning, Ash is woken an hour before dawn by Raihan. Naturally, he complains and tries to go back to sleep, but the Dragon Master tells him that since he agreed to meet his little girlfriend all the way out at the second mine, they need to get going now, since it's over an hour's walk. Ash grumbles but acquiesces, taking some small comfort in the fact that at least he already got the Pokemon transfer out of the way last night. The sun still hasn't risen by the time the two young men reach the mine, and Ash is still half asleep, but when he spots B waiting for them, stoic and silent as ever, he fires right up, and so calls out to her with a wave. B just gives him a nod, and curtly demands to know if he's got his fiercest fighting type with him. Ash beams that he sure does, and so the pair take their places, facing each other. Raihan agrees to referee, and so tells them this will be a one-on-one battle, before instructing them both to bring out their first Pokemon. B opens with a Graploct, saying that this Pokemon is her oldest and most trusted sparring partner, while Ash welcomes an old friend back to the fold as he brings out his Primeape. Proudly wearing its P1 Grand Prix Championship belt, Primeape is the epitome of fierceness as it bangs its two fists together and glowers at Graploct. The blue octopus leers back, flexing its tentacles in an attempt at an intimidating gesture, but Primeape just snorts as if questioning Graploct's strength. B then orders her Pokemon to open with close combat, with Ash calling for the same. Primeape and Graploct then leap at each other, using every limb at their disposal to hit the other with such speed and ferocity that they even manage to kick up a cartoonish dust cloud, with the occasional fist or foot poking out to indicate that the struggle continues. When they break apart, both Pokemon are covered in scuffs and bruises, though that is not the only thing they share. Each now has a newfound respect for the other in their eyes. Graploct takes the initiative once more, using liquidation as water coats its four fists. It then attempts to hammer them against Primeape's furry torso, but the pig monkey tanks the blow, then with a level of speed and grace unexpected in such a stocky Pokemon, spins bodily and plants a powerful mega kick on Graploct's face. The Jujutsu Pokemon goes stumbling back, and so Ash and Primeape press their advantage, with Primeape leaping in as its trainer orders it to use the special move that it learned from Anthony and Hitmonchan. Icicles begin to form around Primeape's fist, and with a shriek it slams down on Graploct's head, sending it crashing into the dirt. It then proceeds to go berserk on its downed foe, using Thrash to continue beating it down every time it attempts to get back up. From her side, B calmly mutters, "Such ferocity," horror and awe showing in equal parts on her face, before she calls for an Octolock. Slithering backwards between Primeape's legs, Graploct avoids the final thrash as it thrusts its upper arm tentacles to bind Primeape at the shoulders. Its leg tentacles then wrap tight around Primeape's legs, and Ash cries out when he realizes this still leaves Graploct's second set of arm tendrils free. Graploct, however, was well aware of this fact from the start, and so lays into Primeape, slamming punch after punch into the pig monkey's back. One of these even manages to knock free the clasp on Primeape's belt, and as it clatters to the ground, Graploct halts its assault, picking up the belt and fastening it around itself, while chuckling something in its language that is presumably about how it is more deserving of the championship title than Primeape. Whatever Graplock said, it enrages Primeape, who bellows in fury and throws itself forward, smashing its own face into the ground but managing to throw Graplock off in the process. As Graplock lands awkwardly, it begins to gather water for another liquidation, but Primeape is faster, and before Ash can even give it a command, it launches itself at the octopus and uses another Ice Punch, this time on one of Graplock's water-covered tentacles touching the ground. The attack hits, freezing the water to the ground and trapping Graplock in place at an awkward angle with one of its arms out of commission. Primeape then screams with primal savagery and begins laying into Graplock, hitting exclusively in the face over and over. When it falls, Primeape rips the belt from its torso and whips it with it until the other fighting type rolls over, so Primeape can punch it some more. By now, Graplock is clearly unconscious, but Primeape doesn't care. So infuriated is it at the slight to its pride that it takes Ash bellowing at it to stop for the onslaught to subside. As if coming out of a fugue state, Primeape looks up at Ash, then down at Graplock, only now noticing how badly injured it is. With something like shame that quickly morphs into frustration, Primeape gets off Graplock and dusts itself off before refastening its belt. Bee uses this chance to recall her Pokemon, while Ash does likewise, before apologizing that Primeape's always been that way, but he thought maybe Anthony's training might have mellowed it out a bit. Bee shakes her head, saying that Primeape displayed the exact fierceness she's been looking for, and that this battle has lifted the scales from her eyes. She is not yet ready to challenge a champion, but one day she will be, so until that day comes, she's going to travel with Ash, study his ways, and eventually crush him. Ash awkwardly says that's nice, before looking to Raihan for help, but Raihan shrugs that Ash got himself into this, so it's none of his business when he's just the guide. And so Bee becomes the third member of their group. After getting to know her a bit better, Ash and Raihan find that she is not quite as abrasive and disconcerting as they had initially believed. Though a few days into their trip, Ash does need to have a word with her about boundaries when he is awoken at 3 AM by a surprise attack from Graplock in the name of training. Bee's mind, it seems, is always on new ways to grow stronger, and her exceptionally disciplined work ethic does make her a valuable sparring partner for both Ash and Raihan. During this time, Primeape and Graplock develop an even deeper rivalry, to the point where Ash decides that when they reach Holbury, he won't send the fighting type back to Kanto as he had originally planned, and instead use it on this journey as an opportunity to make up for lost time with a Pokemon who only briefly travelled with him in Kanto. The journey through Galar Mine number 2 is for the most part a smooth one, with the group following the beaten path and getting a chance to see many wild rock and ground type Pokemon in their natural habitat. However, it seems that not everyone has the same reverence, as on their last day in the mine, the group see a circle of light that seems to be agitating the Pokemon. Rushing in to investigate, they see a pink-haired girl posing while a beleaguered boy with long blonde hair and glasses is holding the offending ring light as he attempts to take pictures of the girl. When the group come into view, forcing the boy to stop taking photos, the girl rounds on them, calling them jerkwads in a coarse voice and snapping that they ruined her shot. However, her demeanor changes entirely when she spots Raihan, and she adopts a faux fancy, sickly sweet voice, hearts in her eyes as she declares that he's Raihan the Dragon Master. Raihan modestly waves this away with a smile, saying it's always nice to meet a fan, but the girl declares that she is more than just a fan, she is his #1 fan. She then hurriedly introduces herself as Clara, though maybe he knows her better by her social media handle, Crazy4Clara, while the cameraman dejectedly chimes in that since once again she brushed over him, his name is Avery, her brother. As Clara tells Avery to hush since the important people are talking, Raihan flashes her a dazzling grin, saying that though he hasn't heard of her, he would love to get to know her, perhaps somewhere where her lights won't inconvenience the wild Pokemon. Clara beams back that she'd love that, and while they talk, they should consider teaming up, since with his status and her raw charisma, they'd become Galar's #1 power couple in a day. This makes Raihan chuckle, and he says that while he is flattered, his heart already belongs to someone, so he cannot take her up on that offer. This flusters the girl, who reverts back to that rougher voice as she snaps that if he won't do it out of love, she'll make him agree, saying that if she beats him in a battle, he'll have to become her boyfriend. Raihan shrugs that yeah, that seems fair, suggesting a 1v1 right here in the mine. Clara grins wickedly that she was thinking the same thing, so Ash, Bee, and Avery clear them a path so they can battle. At once, both trainers bring out their Pokemon, Duraludon for Raihan and Galarian Slowpoke for Clara. The pink-haired girl then jeers that Raihan shouldn't underestimate her, since she's in the running to become a gym leader next season, to which Raihan says that if that's so, he shouldn't hold back. All the charm and joviality the Dragon Master normally exhibits drops from his face, turning him back into the serious battler Ash fought in Hammerlock. Without a second's hesitation, Raihan orders a steel beam which fires immediately, catching the dopey Pokemon and sending it flying through the mine entrance several dozen feet away. Still serious, Raihan instructs Clara to go get her Pokemon since it's going to be in a bad state, before adding a little cheekily that while she's at it, she should return that ring light and get one with a paler bulb, since this one makes her skin look orange. The humiliation of defeat followed by this sly rebuke pushes Clara over the edge, and she calls Raihan a number of bad words that I won't repeat for fear of being demonetized, before storming off in a huff. This tantrum makes Raihan smirk, and as Avery follows behind his sister with a forlorn look, the Hammerlock gym leader calls out a genuine goodbye to him, wishing him luck, since he's gonna need it if he's traveling with her. When the main trio finally do make their way out of the mine, there is no sign of the siblings, for which all of them are glad, and from there it is only a few hours' walk into town. The first thing they notice about Hulbury is the smell. Thanks to being a seaside community, the entire town is permeated with the salty scent of sea spray. Like last time, Ash's first thought is of his gym battle, and when he says that he wants to head straight to the gym, B calls this pointless. Ash asks just why this is, and the stoic young woman tears a flyer off a nearby telephone pole and shows it to him. On it is an announcement that Nessa, the Hulbury gym leader, will be filming a new commercial down by the marina today, and it's open for the public to watch. Though Ash is as impatient as ever, and so finds the idea of waiting for his match frustrating, Raihan tells him they should at least check the commercial filming out. Realizing that refusing won't make his gym battle start any sooner, Ash agrees, and so the trio depart for the harbour. Considering how popular Nessa is, it's hardly surprising that the marina is packed when the three friends arrive. Though Raihan is tall enough to see over the crowd, his two young companions are not, and so he offers to find them a crate or something to stand on. However, before they can begin their search, a warm male voice with a reassuring deep rich timbre tells them that for honoured guests such as themselves, there are better alternatives than boxes. Spinning around, the group come face to face with a man in a grey suit with dark hair. At the sight of him, Raihan bows respectfully, and the man laughs that there's no need, introducing himself to Ash and B as Chairman Rose, head of the Galar League. He then offers them to join him in the VIP section so they can meet Nessa after the shoot, saying it would be good to catch up with his strongest gym leader, as well as make the acquaintance of the Alola champion and the promising apprentice of his old friend Mustard. The trio all agree, and so are led to a roped off area right near the waterline where several members of the crew are waiting there with things like towels and makeup. Near the edge of the group, a man and woman are talking. The woman is unfamiliar to Ash, but he does know the man as Leon. Come over here and meet our new friends, Rose instructs, beckoning the man over. Leon approaches the group and gives Ash and B friendly smiles before seeing with some surprise that the third member is Raihan. Smile doubling, he asks how Raihan has been, saying that he hasn't seen him since their battle in the Champion Cup, to which Raihan grins that he's been getting back to basics, so that when they next battle, he will be the one who comes out on top. Leon smiles that he wouldn't expect anything less from his one and only rival, before throwing his arms around him. Raihan happily returns the hug, until a slight clearing of the throat from Chairman Rose makes them break apart. The chairman then gives the men an easy smile, saying that he is certain the good people of Galar will get many spirited battles out of the pair of them. Speaking of battles, he turns his attention to Ash, asking what a regional champion is doing here in Hulbury. Ash eagerly answers that he's challenging the Galar League, and so wishes to face off against Nessa. Rose says that this is a marvellous idea, calling it a surefire stadium filler, and promising that he will consult with Nessa's people to make it the opening event tomorrow morning. Ash had hoped he might be able to battle today, but Rose will not take no for an answer, telling Ash that it will be great PR for both him and the league, so he just needs to be a little bit more patient. Ash sighs that he guesses that's alright, and Rose claps him on the back, saying that for being such a good sport, he'll have a Dynamax band sent over for him as soon as possible, though he's afraid it probably won't be able to arrive before tomorrow's match. Ash is about to say that that's okay, when the chairman's attention rapidly shifts away from him. In fact, Ash can see that everyone is looking at one place, and so follows their eye line. As a result, he sees a woman soaring through the air on the back of a Milotic, before splashing back down into the water. The pair do a few more leaps, with Ash clearly seeing the elation on the woman's face before coming to a stop near the VIP area. The woman, who Ash has figured must be Nessa, affectionately pats the top of Milotic's head before diving into the water and swimming the rest of the way to where Ash and the others are. She is then helped up by the crew and toweled off as Rose flits over to congratulate her. The woman Leon was talking to before does the same, and seems to Ash that they must be close. After a while, this trio make their way over to where Ash, Raihan, Bee, and Leon are waiting, and Rose introduces the two women as Nessa and Sonia, granddaughter of the region's preeminent professor, Professor Magnolia. He then does the same with Ash and Bee, and they both take turns shaking hands and exchanging pleasantries. Meanwhile, a bit further back in the crowd, Team Rocket are scoping out the event for Pokemon to steal, or rather that's what James and Meowth are doing. Jessie, in her usual fit of vanity, is glowering at Nessa through her binoculars and muttering spiteful comments about how she is much more talented and beautiful than the little water nymph. Her two companions sigh that sure she is, before Meowth proposes that they steal the amazing jumping Milotic. Jessie says that's a great idea, though first she's gonna ride it and show everyone what a real star looks like. And before either of them can stop her, Jessie has barged her way through the crowd and swan dived into the water, paddling over to Milotic. With an exalted cry, she declares that it's gonna give her a ride now, but the ride through the air it does give her is certainly not the sort that Jessie had in mind. Tail glowing green with draconic energy, Milotic swats Jessie away the second she makes contact with it, and the Team Rocket operative goes flying into the VIP area, where she scrapes painfully along the cobbles. Everyone runs over to see if she's alright, with Leon lightly chiding that she really shouldn't have spooked Milotic like that. But when Ash sees Jessie and Jessie sees him, they both make exclamations of mutual dislike, with Ash warning the others to stay back since she's a bad guy from Team Rocket. Raihan then adds his 2 cents, saying they should listen to Ash since he's met them before as well, while Bee nonchalantly comments that Jessie looks too pitiful to be any real threat. This angers Jessie, who demands to know who this new twerpette thinks she's calling pitiful, but in the same tone of voice with an impassive look on her face, Bee replies, "You, was that not obvious?" By now James and Meowth have made their way onto the scene, pushing past security, and for an awkward moment they all stare at each other. Then, with a slight hint of resignation in his voice, James says that even if things didn't work out with Milotic, at least they can still get Pikachu. He then runs at Ash and simply snatches Pikachu off his shoulder. It is a low-tech strategy, but a surprisingly effective one, as he, followed by Jessie and Meowth, dive into the water and begin to doggy paddle away. Raihan reaches for one of his Pokeballs, but Ash shakes his head, saying that this time he will sort this out for himself, before bringing out Cramorant. At first, the absent-minded bird gives its trainer a look of confusion at being called upon, but when Ash cries that Team Rocket are getting away with Pikachu, something like seriousness crosses Cramorant's face, and it ruffles its feathers before diving into the water. Nessa in particular watches as the Gulp Pokemon dives deep enough to vanish among the darkness of the water before appearing underneath Team Rocket and springing up with a peck powerful enough to blow all 3 of them out of the water. As the trio ascends skyward, James loses his grip on Pikachu and it manages to land on Cramorant's back as the bird bobs in the water. Ash then tells Cramorant to use Water Gun and Pikachu to use Thunderbolt, resulting in an electrified water gun which bursts through the air and slams into Team Rocket with enough force to send them blasting off again. Cramorant then somewhat jerkily taxis Pikachu back to the marina, and Ash wraps it in a hug, saying he's so happy it's safe, before putting it down and patting Cramorant, smiling that he knew it cared about Pikachu. However, it seems that what Cramorant really does care about is people trying to steal its lunch, since as soon as Ash is done petting it, it lurches forward and tries to swallow Pikachu once more. As expected, Pikachu shocks it to escape, with Ash returning it to its ball moments later. Nessa sighs that it's a shame Cramorant had to go since she wanted to teach it how to ride the waves. Ash cocks his head and Nessa explains that Cramorant are known to be amazing surfers and perhaps she could help his achieve that since right now it seems only comfortable when it's swimming underwater. Ash smiles that he'd love for her to help Cramorant improve, so he and Nessa agree to meet here at sunset when her modelling obligations are all out of the way. As promised, Ash arrives at the marina just before sundown. Nessa arrives moments later and smiles at him, then backflips into the water. Ash follows her with a cannonball as he brings out Cramorant, who squawks and twists its long neck almost a full 360, trying to figure out why its lower half is wet and cold. It finally has the good sense to look down, and so attempts to dive, but Ash stops it, saying that their training will be above the surface today, eliciting a confused look from Cramorant. The pair then swim out after Nessa. When they are all far enough out that the current actually forms waves large enough to crash over their heads, Nessa brings out her Pokemon, an Arrokuda. She then instructs Arrokuda to show Cramorant how to surf across the waves like a champ. And at once Arrokuda takes off like a missile, skimming over the waves with such speed and grace that Ash doubts his oblivious bird could ever emulate. Nonetheless, he tells Cramorant to try, and it does, kicking its stubby little flippers at high speed as it moves towards a wave. The wave immediately breaks on poor Cramorant's head, and the blue bird is sent shooting back, feet in the air and head underwater. Not sure if Cramorant has the self-preservation instincts to right itself, Ash plucks his friend from the water and places it down right way up, as it shakes its head and caws in shock, the true magnitude of what happened just hitting it now. Nessa paddles over and praises Cramorant for a good effort, but instructs it to really watch Arrokuda. Cramorant narrows its big green eyes, and Ash tries to pay similar attention, watching Arrokuda fly so freely through the water. After a few moments, Nessa asks if he can see the difference, and Ash admits that he can't, so she asks him to get into a swimming position. Ash does so, lying forward, and then it hits him. Arrokuda's fin is behind it just like human legs when they swim, while Cramorant has its feet underneath it, making it more like running than flying. Nessa says that's right, and so Ash tells Cramorant to lie down and try kicking. The difference is apparent immediately, with Cramorant doubling its previous speed, and when it comes up against a wave, instead of crashing into it, it has enough momentum to mount it and ride with it, gaining extra propulsion. Nessa then calls for Cramorant to try spreading its wings, and the bird Pokemon does, with the wings acting like sails, picking up the strong sea winds and using them to push it forward even faster. Though not quite as refined as Arrokuda's usage, this is definitely surf, and Ash cheers with pride. Nessa tells them that now that they've got the basics, all they need to do is keep practicing. Ash thanks her profusely for her help, and Nessa says it was her pleasure before departing with a wave and a smile that she looks forward to their battle in the morning. The next morning comes quick, and Ash is at the gym bright and early. Knowing the drill now, he waits in the locker room, then when the time comes, steps out into a packed stadium to face off against Nessa. The young woman asks if he's ready, and Ash grins that he's ready alright, ready to win his second badge. They both then send out their first Pokemon, Pikachu for Ash and Goldeen for Nessa. Ash looks confused at this choice, knowing firsthand how hard it is for Goldeen to fight on land, and so asks Nessa what she's thinking. Nessa just waggles a finger that Ash shouldn't count out her Pokemon so soon, before recalling it as her Dynamax band begins to spark. Goldeen's ball then turns into a giant pink version of itself, and when Nessa throws it, a Dynamaxed Goldeen appears, many times its previous size. She then orders a Max Geyser, and on command, Goldeen spits out a huge torrent of water. Pikachu dodges the attack with Quick Attack, but as the water hits the stadium wall, it begins to trickle down and pool on the ground. Quickly the water level rises to Ash's ankles, then his waist, and before he knows it, Ash is floating 10 feet off the floor. Life preservers are tossed down to Ash and Nessa to both hold onto during the battle, but the same courtesy is not extended to Pikachu. The electric mouse is forced to tread water to stay afloat, and this puts it at a distinct disadvantage against a Pokemon whose natural habitat is the ocean. In fact, speaking of Goldeen, Ash and Pikachu can no longer see it, which can only mean one thing. But when Nessa has it create a whirlpool by circling the mouse, a huge vortex of water begins to swirl underneath Pikachu. The little electric type tries its hardest to escape the pool, even attempting Quick Attack to run up the water, but it's no use, and when it reaches the center, a giant horn emerges to send Pikachu crashing into the ceiling. When it lands, Pikachu is still able to fight, but that last hit clearly took a toll on it, and so Ash tells it to come back, sending forth someone better equipped for aquatic combat. As Pikachu nuzzles Ash, both for affection and buoyancy, Cramorant takes center stage, using the new way of swimming it learned from Ness to propel itself more gracefully along the water. Goldeen surfaces to eye off its new foe, and then from the delighted squawk Cramorant makes at the sight of it, Ash knows that the blue bird just sees Goldeen as a giant fish dinner. At Ash's command, it then launches forward with Surf, using one of the waves Goldeen made by rising to leap out of the water and fly at it. However, on that flight trajectory, it appears as though Cramorant is in a collision course with Goldeen's Dynamaxed horn, which could likely slice the Gulp Pokemon in two. Ash desperately calls for Cramorant to flap its wings and try to change course somehow, but Cramorant has other ideas, and so opens its beak wide and soars face first onto Goldeen's horn. As a result, it is promptly lodged there, but from what everyone can see in Cramorant's vacant eyes, it couldn't be happier. Its beak is also wedged open, but this is nothing new for the bluebird, and so it begins to tenaciously gnaw down on the horn like a piece of cuttlefish, much to the annoyance of Goldeen. At first it tries to shake the unwelcome hanger-on off, but when this is unsuccessful, Goldeen submerges itself once more, this time aiming at the wall in an attempt to ram Cramorant against it. However, in typical Cramorant fashion, the dopey bird runs out of air midway through the charge and so lets go, floating upwards at just the last second so that Goldeen goes crashing into the stadium wall alone. This creates a number of large waves in the water, with Ash and Pikachu hanging tight to each other to avoid being swept apart. Meanwhile, Cramorant, by some insane luck, finds itself atop the tallest wave, which Ash seizes for the opportunity that it is. As Goldeen surfaces, now back to its normal size thanks to its Dynamax period expiring, Ash commands Cramorant to bring the giant wave down on its head. Nessa cries for Goldeen to dodge, but when half the pool is being thrown against a small fish, there is very little space the small fish can escape to. And so as Cramorant musters a final surf to steer the wall of water, it slams into Goldeen, knocking it unconscious. As Nessa recalls Goldeen and Cramorant swims over to Ash and Pikachu, Ash comments that this water battlefield reminds him a lot of his match against Juan in the Sutopolis gym. Nessa beamed that she once battled there as well, saying Juan's style has always been one of her biggest inspirations. She then suggests that since she's down to 2 Pokemon, and he's familiar with the format, why don't they make this last round a double battle, just like the one Juan uses to start off his gym matches. Ash knows that strategically this is unwise, since it would mean pitting 2 of his Pokemon who have already battled against a pair of fresh Pokemon. But in truth, he simply cannot resist the challenge, and so agrees, having Pikachu leap onto Cramorant's back. Nessa smiles, thanking him for being so accommodating, and brings out her final 2 Pokemon, Arrokuda and Dreadnought. Ash already knows Arrokuda and how fluidly it can move through the water, though Dreadnought with his bulky frame is an unknown quantity, and so Ash tells Pikachu to use Thunderbolt on it. Pikachu complies, zapping Dreadnought, but as the electrical current passes through Dreadnought, it spreads into the water. By virtue of its speed, Arrokuda leaps into the air just in time to avoid the attack, but Cramorant isn't so lucky, and so winds up taking quadruple damage from its partner. Nessa then smiles that Ash will have to be very careful how he uses electrical moves, before having Arrokuda use Aqua Jet to shoot forth, and slam into Pikachu, knocking it into the water. It then attempts to trap Pikachu with Whirlpool like Goldeen did, but Cramorant is at least quick enough to surf in and rescue Pikachu, before attempting to dart to the other side of the water battlefield. However, their escape is cut off when Dreadnought bursts out of the water with a bite attack, its heavy jaws closing around Cramorant's neck. Pikachu is able to dislodge the bite with a swift Iron Tail, but the damage is done. Meanwhile, Arrokuda has made its way over to them, slowly circling Pikachu and Cramorant. Then as one of the gym leader's Pokemon spring into action, Arrokuda using Aqua Jet to charge headlong at Cramorant, while Dreadnought leaps out of the water behind it to nab Pikachu. However, Ash and his out-of-the-box thinking come to the fore here. He tells Pikachu to jump off Cramorant and use Electro Web, while having Cramorant meet Arrokuda's Aqua Jet with Surf. The pair of Pokemon do as they're told, with Pikachu bouncing high into the air and firing off a circle of electrical netting, which catches Dreadnought and pins it to the wall. Meanwhile, as soon as Pikachu's weight is lifted from Cramorant's back, it shoots forward, easily able to match Arrokuda in speed, before shifting to Peck at the last second. This change from body to beak as point of impact has an unexpected consequence, so when Cramorant raises its head, Arrokuda is poking out of its mouth and flailing wildly. In a move that is a shock to no one, Cramorant attempts to swallow the fish, but Ash chides the bird to let it go. After a moment of contemplation, an act which seems to cause the dopey bird physical pain, it obliges its trainer, spitting Arrokuda into Pikachu's Electro Web, causing both of Nessa's Pokemon to sizzle briefly before they drop back into the water. However, this brief salvo has given Ash an idea for a finishing move, and so as Pikachu begins to land, he has Cramorant catch the mouse in his mouth. Pikachu luckily lands feet first, and so is able to see as Ash has Cramorant use Surf to pick up momentum by riding the waves that Arrokuda and Dreadnought's landing have caused. Finally, when he feels that Cramorant has enough speed, he orders it to leap out of the water and spit Pikachu at the opposing Pokemon. With a muffled caw, Cramorant takes wing and immediately fires Pikachu like a cannonball at Arrokuda and Dreadnought. When the starter is in close, Ash has it use a full power Thunderbolt, with no need to hold back now since Cramorant is out of harm's way. Pikachu gleefully obeys, and so the entirety of Hulbury Stadium glows yellow as the little electric type puts everything it has into the move. Even Ash is caught up in it, seeing stars and feeling his fingers involuntarily tighten around his life preserver. However, this discomfort is only temporary, and when it stops, Pikachu is doing a lazy backstroke, while Dreadnought and Arrokuda are floating belly up, unconscious. After the battlefield is drained and Ash has had a chance to change into some dry clothes, he returns to the field to receive his water badge. But to his surprise, Nessa is not the only one waiting for him. Chairman Rose and Leon are also there. After clasping hands with the gym leader and being handed his badge, Leon approaches him next, patting Ash on the back and saying that he looks forward to facing him in the next Champion Cup. This praise earns a wild cheer from the crowd, but it's nothing to the applause Ash receives when Chairman Rose steps forth, placing a Dynamax band on Ash's wrist, then raising that hand into the air like a victorious boxer. Rose then announces that Ash Ketchum is a name they should all remember, since he is his prediction for the next champion of the Galar region. And that's where we'll leave things. How will things change for Ash after such high praise from the chairman? What trials will his next gym battle entail? And will our hero be able to get a hang of the Dynamax phenomenon? Find out as the journey continues.